welcome everybody. This is our webinar, Meisterplan Roadmap, the latest and the greatest for Q4 2023. So my name is Caroline Politsky. I'm the Director of Product Marketing, and I'm here with my colleague Achim Gnan, and he is our Senior Customer Success Manager. And if we move on to the next slide, well, the agenda today is first we'll look at a deep dive topic on user management and permissions. Our product roadmap will be our next topic. So then we'll look at what's been recently released, what our release highlights are, and then what we have planned. So what our future planned improvements are. And then we'll also have a Q&A session. So at this point, I will hand it over to Achim, who will speak about efficient user and permission management in Meisterplan. So thank you, Achim.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for your time today. As Caroline said, we'll be focusing on Meisterplan's user management functionality today. And I will walk you through the following areas. First, we'll look a little bit at some common success factors for efficient user management in Meisterplan. We'll be looking at an overview of some user management features. Some are probably already familiar to you. Some are rather new. And at last, I'll walk you through some best practices, and we'll share some use cases with you, and we'll focusing on a couple of typical user groups and roles, and we'll be jumping back and forth and look at different configurations. All right, let's talk about the success factors for a moment that are supposed to really help you with efficient and secure user management in Meisterplan. The first one, many of you are familiar of that from your onboarding or implementation phases, is a good understanding of roles and responsibilities. That type of information really helps you to configure your user group details appropriately. And it is recommended that you map these responsibilities out according to your typical organizational roles. An added value here is that it's also a great basis for documentation, which you can share as part of your user guidelines. The second part is more focused on a functionality in Meisterplan. It is about linking user and resource profiles. This link is important because it allows you to enforce some of the built-in functionality to efficiently provide access to the user groups that you configured. And last, the IAM, so that's the Identity and Access Management Group, is typically an important stakeholder in nowadays world of IT applications. So there's a few things that you can ensure and leverage in the user management section in Meisterplan. The first point is that you can configure and enforce your own password complexities and expiration dates, so basically your password policy. The second point is you can also leverage Microsoft or Google Work account logins, so that if that's standard in your organization, that can be helpful because it will also enforce any type of two-factor authentication, for example, through Microsoft or Google. And last but not least, and that's the most secure and efficient way to do it, is single sign-on. This means that you can activate SAML 2.0, which is a standard Meisterplan, and it is broadly supported by most identity providers out there. We have vast documentation about that in our help center at help.meisterplan.com. And you typically need support from an internal colleague who is helping and managing any type of authentication certificates. So if you have any questions there or you need guidance, then you can always reach out to us on how to configure that. All right, I will take it from here and jump from the PowerPoint slides to the systems. So bear with me for 1 second. I hope you can see a Meisterplan system now. If not, my colleagues will scream at me. And before we look at the user group management section, I quickly want to show you what I just said. And in the user management section here in Meisterplan under Manage Users, if you don't know that yet, under Configure here, that's in the toolbar on the top, that's the area where you can manage your password settings. So you could here enforce your password policy in terms of expiration dates or expiration days, excuse me, number of characters and complexity. And the same goes for the SAML 2.0. So here you would basically enable SAML and then also paste in and manage all of the information from your security certificates from your IDP. So in case you didn't know that, that's all under Manage Users. All right, let's jump back to the user group management section where I would like to start this part in detail. Now, user groups are typically named after the process or organizational role. Managing users on a group level enables you to efficiently define and enforce your access controls for multiple users at the same time. So if we look at the project manager example here, then you can see that there are less boxes checked than you would probably see in a typical admin role, right? So in the upper section of my screen, right, you can see that, for example, certain things like managing APIs, connectors, importing data, or also here managing subscription and users and user groups are not part of a standard end user group like project, resource managers, portfolio managers even. Um, so that is an important, like, yeah, part of the user groups. Um, Besides of these fundamental differences, you can then manage though very detailed user rights, and we will go through this in examples a little bit later. But in detail, you can manage really who can access what kind of custom fields, for example, status updates, or even resource allocations, milestones, and so on. But again, we'll have some best practice examples in a little moment. Um, Going back to the manage section, the second part that is important in terms of who can see what in Meisterplan and also helping to reduce the complexity of what you can see and access is called customizable navigation. You can see it here in the middle of my screen. Now, customizable navigation really is a rather new feature since about summer this year that allows you to manage who can see what views. And the views I'm talking about are the ones in the left side panel here, right? So you can see in each of these row items what user group can access, for example, the portfolio designer, right? So the custom navigation access really allows you to configure um, what's being displayed basically in the tool. And what you want to do is you want to enable only what's relevant, right? And you can hide what's not important and potentially distracting. So these settings, they will essentially manage what users can see in the left-hand side navigation. All right. And also later in some of the examples that we look at, you will see that the left side panel will shrink in terms of, yeah, the available views. Now, another important area that is connected to the user group settings and also manages the amount of data and the type of data you can access is the portfolios. So the portfolios here on top of all of these tiles, they are since just a few, I think weeks now available also together with the user group management. So that means in details that the portfolios, right, they provide the filter options that you can use to limit the access to the data, right? So basically portfolios are not just there to help reduce the complexity of what people can see in terms of I only want to see active projects versus non-active projects, but they also determine that you can only edit the data that is part of the portfolio filter you are assigned to. So if we look, for example, here at this portfolio filter called active and approved, you can see in the details that we are filtering here in the middle section only for projects that are approved and active, right? So we can see that here in the filter selection. And on the left-hand side, I can see now all of the user groups that have access to this portfolio. So based on the portfolio access in the user groups, you can ensure that certain user groups then only see the portfolios that you assign to them. And a big advantage here is that as an admin, for example, you don't want to add new users one by one to each of the portfolios, but instead you can, through the user groups, assign people automatically as they join your organization, right? So if you have a new colleague, for example, a project manager, join your teams, and they are assigned to the project manager user group, they will automatically get assigned to all of the appropriate portfolios that you configured for them. So there's no additional admin effort required to manage user access by managing your portfolios through the user groups, right? If you wanted, though, you could also add individual resources to portfolios. So there's no need to only use user groups. You could also for scenarios, it's the same look and feel what we see here, also assign individuals. So that's a big improvement, really, to say you can leverage your user groups also in the portfolio manager section. Okay, now custom views is the next part I would like to talk about. And for the custom views, we will look at the project list. The custom views are around for a little bit now, but there is a little bit of additional information that I would like to walk you through. As we look at the project list, important is that what we now look at in terms of the custom view management, it's the same look and feel across other views in the tool. So the team planner, the board view, and the roadmap view, they all work the same in terms of enabling and sharing custom views with others. Okay. Now, in the top section here, you can see with this little drop down that I can here select from different types of views that have been either pre-configured, so you can see that actually with the little icon here with the multiple resources next to active and approved projects. So that means it's a shared view, or I can also on top of that create my own personal views. We'll see the details of the user access levels in a moment. But the essential point here is that you can basically create standards for your organization. And again, through the user group management, these views become available basically automatically, right? So you don't have to pivot from user to user and enable these views. So if I'm here in the active and approved projects view and I want to add any additional information, for example, I want to add the status information of the projects, then I can change the view, right? I basically look for a new point of information. I'm adding an additional column, status. We can now see that we have next to the stage gate column also the status. You could even apply additional filters, for example. Again, we could even filter by status and say we only want to see projects that need attention and that are in a critical condition. And as you now want to move forward and share this with your organization, you could either save this configuration, so you can save this existing view with the settings that you just changed, or when you click on the blue drop-down icon on top here, you can also select from Save as New Custom View. And what you see here now is that you can again select from single users, so you could share this with select users, or you could leverage again the user groups. So that means as you update these views, for example, or you create a new view that you want to make accessible to an entire group of people, then you can do so here via the user groups, right? So in this case, I could say, I want to share it with the entire organization. And since we added some status information, I also update the name. So naming is always an important deal, especially when you work with shared access. All right. How can you ensure that you and others have the appropriate access level to manage shared views? Let's go to Manage, back to our user groups, and let's go here to the system admins for now. In the top section here under administrative rights in the middle, you can see that there is a drop-down and it's called Manage Custom Views and Reports. So we have three access levels: private, shared, and all. Private means that a user within this user group can access all of the views that have been shared with them with this particular user group, and they can create their own views on top of that are not accessible to others. And also, most importantly, they cannot change shared views, right? So there's no threat in terms of all of the views that you provided to the user groups could be changed, right? So that all basically the shared views, they stay intact, but people can create still their own private views. Shared means that's a little bit more detailed, that people can basically not just access the views they have been assigned to, but they can also change and share views with others. So that's more comprehensive, typically not recommended for standard end users, but very common, for example, for users like portfolio managers who manage a wider range of projects and potentially also views and stakeholders. And then obviously, it's a typical admin right. This enables you to access anything that's out there and make changes to that. Okay. Preparation for user onboarding is one more area that I would like to cover before we jump into the best practices. Under the user management section, there is different ways on how you can create user profiles and also invite users. Obviously, you can click on Add Single User in the toolbar, which allows you to basically configure usernames, email addresses, first and last name, etc. You can also here select the appropriate user groups. A quick way to invite users is literally via invite users. That allows you to just quickly type in an email address and select the appropriate user group. And you can then at a later point in time add additional information like the first and last name and the user link. Last but not least, for any premium subscriptions, there is also the user auto provisioning available. That means that you can directly populate user accounts through your identity provider. So if you manage a large amount of users, that's typically what makes the life of an admin much easier if you can populate and manage the user accounts directly through your IDP. All right. Now, best practice and use case sharing. We start with a common user group first called the portfolio managers. And when we jump here into the user groups, you can see that we have different types of groups, including users. So nice thing is in the user group overview, you can directly see how many active users you have assigned to your groups, and also already a little peek in terms of who are the users within each group. Now, the portfolio managers typically are a group that has a wide range of access, simply because of the nature of the role. So that means that many of the user settings that we see here, also at the bottom, they are checked, right? So typically managing schedules, for example, managing metadata like the project field access rights, very popular for portfolio manager access. So that's typically just one step below like a wider PMO or admin role. Now, the project managers, they are an interesting role because here you can leverage really the project manager assignments. And we'll do that now by signing in to a project manager profile. All right. So before we do that though, I want to highlight to you that we have specific user rights that support certain groups. So you can see here in the left bottom corner under project and program rights that there is a little drop down. And this drop down here has a specific user rights for project managers. So through the project manager assignments on your projects, you can enforce through the user group settings that any user who's a project manager and assigned to this group can only access the projects they are assigned to as a PM. So without doing anything else as an admin, you can, with this setting, manage the access to projects for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 project managers in this group, right? So it's a really powerful and efficient way to manage access for project managers. On top of that, you can also then decide, for example, at the very bottom of the screen here, whether project managers can only manage role allocations. So basically they can submit demand on the role level. And then other groups like the resource managers, for example, manage the individual staffing to the actual person who's doing the work. That's a little bit of a detailed right that really depends on your workflow and how you share the access and responsibilities between these groups. But let's jump back and forth real quick, okay? I'm logging out here and I'm going to sign up as a project manager. And we'll see now what the system looks like, right? And the system looks like a project manager, basically. So I'm logging in as Henry, who is a PM in my system here. And you can directly see that my designer is showing a limited amount of projects, right? It's only showing the projects I'm assigned to as a project manager. To do that, you can see in the black header bar, I'm also leveraging a portfolio. So I created a portfolio that is assigned to my project managers. And through this portfolio access, which is connected to the user group, I can automatically ensure that my PMs can only edit and see their projects. The same in the project list view, right? I created a project list view. You can see here the filter in the toolbar. It's called logged in user. That was the user right we just looked at in the user groups. And through this right, I can really conveniently manage the access directly without having to jump back and forth. And yeah, Henry can only go in here and access the data that I want him to access through the user groups. Okay, now another group that's very popular would be the resource managers. So there is also a specific right available that allows you to enable only the resources, like editing the resources that you are assigned to as a resource manager. So for the resource managers, for example, via the customizable navigation access, you can see in the left toolbar, we can't access the designer. Designer is in this case only available to the portfolio and project managers. It's typically a more project-centric view. But for the resource managers, what matters to me really is to access quickly and efficiently the resources that are part of my team, right, that are in my responsibility. So similar to what we saw a second ago, the logged in user, I can select this here as well for my resource managers. And that means that I'm seeing here, in this case, I'm logged in as Linda, who's a resource manager. I can only see the people that are within Linda's team, and Linda can go in and also manage the individual assignments, right, in terms of resource health, right? Are people used healthy in a healthy way in terms of capacity? And also very popular is managing the demand. So basically looking at what's coming in from a demand perspective and then staffing this demand to individuals by looking at available resources. So resource managers typically, right, would access the team planner with the resource manager access rights and also potentially the resource pool where they can manage, for example, here, when I click on the little square icon for Sophie, where a resource manager could manage anything like absences or part-time working models if the capacity changes significantly over a longer time. All right, last but not least, I want to show you team member access. So there's also a group in my setup which is called team members only. And this is now especially important since we have the new actuals functionality. So actuals means that with my projects view, you can see it on the left side here, individual users can go in and can access only the projects they are assigned to in terms of an overview at the bottom here, what's planned, and they can submit their actuals. So with the custom navigation access and the actual time management feature, you can really strip down the amount of information that's shown to your users and basically leverage this as a transparency feature to show what's planned, right? What's coming up in terms of the work you are assigned to, but also collect actual time worked information and then compare plan versus actuals in your system. So yeah, if you have any questions on how to leverage that in your organization and potentially increase the amount of users and leverage more data points in the future, feel free to reach out to us. You know how to find us. Submit a ticket or write to support@meisterplan.com. And yeah, I'm going to hand it back to my colleague Caroline. Thank you for listening and happy to answer any questions later.
We will take a look now at what has been recently released. So we'll start now with the portfolio dashboard. So that is something that has been released recently, and this is meant to be a dashboard where you can see, you can configure it to be exactly what project information that you need. So for instance, you can add bar charts and donut charts to show a summary of project information that you need. You can also add in column charts or individual numeric value KPIs, for instance, to see financial data. This feature is currently in the beta section, in beta. And so we would love to have your feedback. So we encourage you guys to try it out. You can delete cards as you want. As of right now, you're not able to edit or drag and drop the different cards, but you can add new cards. So there's different opportunities here. You can use the bar chart, the column chart, donut chart, or KPIs, which are individual numeric values. You can also save the different configurations as as specific custom views. And yeah, so that, like I said, this is a beta feature, and I'll show you. We'll talk about different ways that you can give your feedback later. So moving on to the next feature, we have, as Achim already told you guys about the My Projects, and the newest part of My Projects is the My Actual Time Worked. So this is where individual team members can go in and put their time worked. So for instance, if they've worked exactly as was planned, you can just check the mark and the amount of that time will be evenly distributed across that week. Now, if that, as you see here, this was evenly distributed between Monday through Thursday because Friday is in the future. So for actual time worked, it's only, you can't contribute to the future. So if that's not accurate and you actually worked 8 hours per week, so you could delete that, you could put in the actual 8 hours, and then you could take that and copy it to the other cells. And then the next day, on Friday, if you work another 8 hours for that project, you can add that in. So these are just different ways that team members themselves can really very easily track their own time and show what time they're actually spending on the projects that they're assigned to. So the next piece that we'll talk about that has already been released is the new management of our reports. So you can see this list of the reports, and what you're able to do here is you can go in and edit the different reports, and you can do that based on user access rights as you were before for individuals, but now you can also add specific user groups that you want to give access to for the specific reports. And you can also add reports here, clicking this button, and you can do so by selecting a specific report type, or you can select a template for pre-configured templates to add in a report that you want. And so that is the new ability for the report section. And again, we'd love to have feedback on how that's working out for you. The next area that we'll take a look at are integrations. So we have a nice new view where you can see all of the different integrations, or not all, some of the integrations that you can connect your Meisterplan data or your data from other tools that you're already using. So you can kind of scroll through and see what tools we have here and take a look. For instance, Microsoft Project for the web. It will load the templates, taking a moment. Again, there we go. So you can immediately access some of the templates to get your data from the tools that you're using into Meisterplan. If there's something missing that you don't see, you can take a look in the Help Center and also reach out to us individually. Another example of a new integration that we've recently added is our Microsoft Teams app. So if you use Microsoft Teams on a daily basis, we now have a Meisterplan app, and you can search for that in Teams and add that in. And so what this does, currently we already have email notifications, but if you use Microsoft Teams, you can set up notifications in order to find out when someone comments on one of your projects or a project that's relevant to you. And also you can see when changes have been made to one of your projects. So that way, if you're like me, I'm pretty bad about getting to my email very quickly, but I'm in Teams all the time, so I will immediately see those notifications there. So that's a big help for me personally. All right, so the next thing that I want to show you guys that we have recently released is the place where you manage scenarios and portfolios has now changed, and it's now in this manage section here. And what you can go in and do there is you'll see a list of the different, for instance, in this case, scenarios. And similar to the reports, you can go in and you can add specific user groups that have the rights to those scenarios. That is similar with portfolios. You can do the same with portfolios. And there's also functionality, it's not showing right here, but you'll also be able to access the portfolio budget here in this manage section if you're using the portfolio budget. Okay, so that is what some of the highlights of what have been recently released. What we have next, or what I'd like to show you next, is you can go here into the help section and head over to our release notes. And this will give you detailed information about what has been released recently in Meisterplan. So if you want further details or to see different minor changes or bugs that have been resolved, this is the place to go to find all of that detailed information. So now at this point, I will go ahead and hand over to our special guest, Thomas Pelzer. He is one of our colleagues here. He's a product owner in our product team, and he is going to tell us a bit more about an upcoming topic, and that is limiting project access. So I will now hand it over to Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Caroline. Hello everyone. My name is Thomas Pelzer. Like Caroline said, I'm a product owner of Team Platform at IT Design Core Product Meisterplan, and I'm primarily responsible for the infrastructure, the operations, as well as the authentication and the rights management. Today, therefore, I'm really excited to talk a little bit about future potentials in the project access management that we are currently experimenting with. We at Meisterplan are thinking about project access on 3 levels while considering key roles: individual, organizational, and administrative. The individual level of project access serves to map entity-level responsibility and hence secure data quality. You can think of it as making sure that at least the one person who helms the project can see and edit data about it. This level is typically assigned to roles like the project manager or step-ins. The organizational level is way more versatile. It enables to map structural responsibility and hence fosters process security and general transparency. A head of Department A, for example, should be able to engage with all projects within Department A and potentially correct or support individual project managers on them. Likewise, to foster motivation and planning transparency, most team members should be able to understand their department's roadmap by actually seeing, although mostly not editing, what their department is working on. Resource managers, in the same manner, need to have transparency about projects their resources are working on, which again are most commonly unified by an organizational breakdown structure. Sometimes your organization gets really big and finally global. In this case, we often observe the legal requirement to not be able to see certain projects because they belong to totally different regions or even continents. Here again, the OBS is a good reference for what users should see and what not. Finally, the administrative level enables to map full responsibility for everything, resulting in security through a fallback user. Generally, this level is isolated to but a handful of users who need to control or step in a lot. Hence, you see the alignment to the portfolio coordinator or admin roles. Today in Meisterplan, those three levels are served at very different locations. While the individual and administrative can be observed in the user groups, like shown by Achim earlier during this presentation via specific rights configurations, the organizational level can be found in our portfolio configuration, likewise shown before. Portfolios, however, are not really fully meant to form a project access management level. One of the key benefits of Meisterplan is making cross-portfolio work and efficient resource management without boundaries easily achievable, visible, and understandable. You can actually see this in the portfolio designer, where you see all projects a resource is allocated on independent of the portfolio when filtering for it in the resource histogram. This is a really, really useful feature. Though it is not so useful when a user should not actually see, let alone edit across organizational boundaries, or in this case, portfolios. Because of this, we are thinking about unifying all the access levels in edit and read in the user groups, making them the go-to place for project access configuration, all the while still enabling you to use all existing project filters on portfolios to cut portfolios according to planning needs. Because we're in the user groups, these rights will be hard configured, meaning that if you do not have read or edit permission here, you won't have them anywhere. Lastly, we don't want to send all of you in a configuration frenzy each time someone new joins your organization or one of your OBS shifts. Hence, we are aiming to leverage all the OBS data throughout your Meisterplan system for all new and exciting access configurations. So exciting, in fact, that I want to plague you with them in the final stretch of this outlook. The OBS is a very present entity throughout Meisterplan. For a start, any OBS and its hierarchy need to be defined in Meisterplan strictly. Then you're able to assign it to both your resources and projects alike. This large spread is what we want to leverage in project access configuration. For this to happen, we think about introducing two new access scopes to the existing ones, access by OBS unit and access by OBS branch. Both can be configured for each existing OBS type separately. I will now walk you through how these new options work for secure and totally hassle-free configuration. Let us take a look at a potential OBS called Office. You can see the hierarchy on the right side here. Now, when you're configuring the OBS unit access scope for the Office OBS on a user group, you're essentially giving access to all projects which have the Office OBS identical or hierarchical below of the active users linked resources Office OBS. In this example, we assume a user with the Office OBS set to Lyon, essentially allowing access to projects with but Lyon set as Office OBS, considering the Office OBS hierarchy. So all other projects are not available, like for example, projects with the Office OBS set to France, Germany, or North America. Concerning the word access, keep in mind that you're able to configure both read and edit scopes separately via these new settings. Now let us assume the active users linked resource OBS is a little bit higher in the hierarchy, like France, for example. Keeping the same OBS unit access scope for projects in the user group, you can now see that access is broadened. Users with this configuration now have all of France and below available, so even projects with Office set to Paris or Strasbourg. This should prove especially useful in configuring project added access for head of departments, enabling them to take full responsibility. Notice, however, that the looked at user still has no access to projects assigned to, for example, Europe, Asia, or China. The second OBS access scope we are thinking about introducing is the OBS branch scope. We are keeping all aspects from before for this example, so our potential user has France configured as Office OBS. The OBS branch access level now grants access to all projects with the Office OBS set to anything in the Europe branch of the Office OBS. This works independently of the location of the user's linked resources Office OBS in the hierarchy, and such would be the same if it was, say, Lyon, Paris, Strasbourg, Germany, Spain, or Europe. This is an awesome configuration for project read access when separating different regions based on an OBS, like, for example, China from Europe. Likewise, this configuration allows for maximum transparency in an OBS for all team members. Lastly, this is but a current design state of enabling better project access management on an organizational level. Since we all represent a loving Meisterplan community, you have the power to steer our decisions by giving us feedback. Feel free to push your feedback to us easily via product board. That's it for me and the relative far-ish distant future. Back to Caroline, who hopefully has some improvements to show that are likely a little bit closer to release.
Thanks so much, Thomas. Yes, we will move on to releases that are coming very soon. Sorry, now I can speak. Yeah, so we are, let's look at here in the portfolio, we'll start in the Portfolio Designer, we'll move over to our project details. So this one is coming so soon that I believe it will be released tomorrow. So this is the ability to see allocations directly in the project details. So for instance, we had project managers in mind with this. So this would be an area where if you have a new project, you would go in and you could enter in the specific allocations for the different project team members that you have assigned to your project. It would also be a place where you could go to view the allocations or to make edits as needed. So like I said, this is something coming very quickly and will be a big improvement. You won't have to go to the Portfolio Designer or to the Team Planner. They can work directly in the project details area to update that information. So another thing that is coming soon is you might have not yet seen this bell icon, but this is our new in-app notification icon that's coming very soon. And so here you'll get comment notifications. So similar to where you could get the information when people comment on your projects in Teams, now you can do it directly in Meisterplan. So if you're working in Meisterplan and somebody comments on your project or on if you're a resource manager on one of your resource allocations, you can immediately see those comments and react and answer any questions that they have or communicate with the person there. So those are two things that are coming very soon. I'll move on over to our product roadmap, and that's something that Thomas just told you guys, encouraged you guys to go to. This is where you can also see more information about different things that we've already released, going back quite a ways. You can see here as well what's in beta. So we already talked about the portfolio dashboard earlier. So here you can get more information about that. So you can see like what we're trying to accomplish. You can click here to give specific feedback yourself. You can get more information in our beta article. If you look through some of the comments from internally from Meisterplan product management here, you can find out exactly what's new. And then here is great information on what we plan to add in the future to this that might not yet be part of the beta. So we definitely encourage you guys to take a look at this. You can vote on how important this feature is for you. And you can also submit feedback or submit new ideas here if there's something that you would like to communicate to the product management team. And if you have other feedback, you're always welcome to submit that to your customer success partner. In the roadmap, we also have our plan section. So this is usually what is currently in progress. So these are the different features that we're currently working on. So you can see we have a few different things here. One of the ones I'd like to highlight is our custom tabs on project details. So and I'll jump back into my screen. So here we could see that we have that new allocations tab. So we have the typical project details that you guys are probably all familiar with. And then we have this allocations tab. Well, coming soon will be additional tabs. And you'll be able to name those tabs exactly how you like to, and you can edit and configure those to show exactly the information that you want. So for instance, if you want to show, have a tab that shows financial data, you can have your budget and your financial trackers and cost type trackers all together in one tab to quickly look at that. If you want to have a tab on actuals where you see like the plan versus actuals from an allocation standpoint or plan versus actuals from a financial standpoint, you can put all of the appropriate trackers there. So that's something that's coming in the next week or two, I believe. So coming soon. Yeah, so then another thing that I highly recommend you guys take a look at are also in the product roadmap is the under consideration tab. So that's where we have categorized by different topics. So portfolio planning, resource management, and so on. But you can take a look at different things that we're already considering and already starting to plan out and work on. So this is another opportunity for you guys to go in and for the topics that are most important to you to really, or if they're not important to you, you can say that, but you can vote and show exactly what is most important and what is not important to you. And take a look at what we're thinking about and again, give your feedback. So again, there's the submit idea button. So you can really, if you don't see something that you really feel is missing in Meisterplan and you really want to communicate that, this is a place to do that. So I highly encourage you guys to use the product roadmap and give your feedback and help. It's your choice. We can hear your voice at that point, which we really want to do. We want to make sure that we develop our application exactly to what suits your needs. So now we can move on to the question and answer portion. So if you have a question, I encourage you guys to raise your hand, or you can also write into the questions panel, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So let me look at, so I think the first question that we have is it possible to enforce single sign-on as the only authentication option for end users, or can users still log in with a username and password combination when SSO is enabled? Achim, do you want to take that one?
Okay. Yeah, of course. Let me share my screen again, because that's indeed possible. So basically ensuring that there is only single sign-on available as a login. There is an important condition though. So first of all, in the user groups, there is a right, and that right is called here in the middle section under administrative rights, it's called manage users and user groups. So this right typically is only available for admins who manage users and user groups. So if all of your user groups like project managers, portfolio, resource managers, etc., have this box not checked, right? And you have enabled single sign-on in the user manage section, the section we looked at earlier briefly, so under manage and users. So when under configure, SAML, when this is configured and basically your single sign-on information is accurate here, then only your single sign-on method will work for end users, right? So it's the same look and feel that you use across other solutions, yeah, for login. So yeah, there is really no way around that. so that users could use username and password combination when SAML is enabled and the user group setting I just showed you is disabled.
Thank you, Achim. The next question that we have is what are the must-have configuration settings so that resource managers can access only their own resources?
Okay, yeah, so we looked earlier at the example of Linda, right, where we only saw the resources assigned to Linda. So the first thing while we are here actually is it's what we talked about. It's the link from users to resources. So looking at Linda's profile here, right, it's obviously a fake profile, but we can see Linda's first and last name. It's important that here this dropdown here is connected to Linda's resource, right? So the user profile is connected to the resource, Linda. And then the second part is in the resource pool, in fact. So in the resource pool, you basically have to ensure that all of the resources here in this left column are mapped accordingly. So when we quickly sort this column here, we can then see basically all of the resources here that are assigned to Linda, right? So Linda is the resource manager of these groups here, of these people. So with these two links, then you can leverage what we earlier looked at, and that is this here, resource manager. Actually, I'm just filtering by Linda because I'm an admin right now, but it's this right here, logged in user, right? That similar to the project managers will ensure that all of the resource managers can only access the people within their responsibility.
Great, thank you, Achim. Okay, we have a couple more questions coming in. The next one is the different access rights for managing custom views are unclear. I can only select save as new view in the project list view. Are there any best practices or other details that are available?
Okay, so earlier we looked briefly at the different levels in the user group section. So that's this, the free access levels, right, are called here, you can see it in the top middle, all shared and private. So it's actually a common question that we get. So to quickly repeat that is, so the best practice really for most of your end user groups, so right, project managers, for example, or resource managers, is really to leverage the private option, because private really allows you to provide views to your users, but users can still create additional custom views that are not accessible to anyone else. Actually, if you want to look this up in the Help Center, we just also included this for the reports. Caroline mentioned this earlier, so that's why I have it open here. You can see here an overview that really in a detailed way explains different types of settings that come with each setting, private, shared, and all. So really the best practice would be to leverage private for most of the end user groups and shared for users who are managing a little bit a broader range of access and responsibilities. That's
Great.
my take or our take on that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. The next question, Achim, is can assigning the resource manager happen at the role level instead of the individual level?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Can you assign resource managers to a role instead of to an individual?
Resource managers through role. Yeah, that's possible in the resource pool as well. So in the resource pool, you can switch tabs, right? So between resources and roles. So when you switch to roles, there you can in fact also assign that. And it's probably a good question because you can see in my case, I can see the resource manager. So if you're missing this information for the roles, just click on Configure Columns, and here just search for Resource Manager. And you can then here just slot it in any column you like. So let's just put it right behind the name of the role. And now you can, in fact, select these resource managers. So I'm not 100% sure that's part of the default configuration when you log into the system. So you might have to search for the column and add it to your configuration, similar to what I just did. And then you can also assign a resource manager to the role level on top of that. So that's actually helpful when you want to also enable a resource manager to take care of the staffing, right? So the role demand and then staff it to individuals and not just monitor and manage individual resources within your team.
Okay, Achim, I think there's a follow-up question on this one. It says, regarding resource manager assignment, will both work together or will one override the other? For example, will the manager assign to a role and a different manager assigned to an individual that is different than the role?
It should not override it. No, not really, because so basically if you, it's like Linda's example, right? Let's just take Linda out of the consultant junior, for example, right? Just like that. And then for resources though, right, I still have Linda, for example, here assigned also to people who are within consultant junior, right? Like Sophie, Julia, Zoe. And when I now go back into the team planner, where I'm still looking for resource manager Linda, I can see that I still see the individuals, but the role on top basically disappeared, right? That was the resource manager to role assignment that I just removed. So basically, if you want that a resource manager can access both the role and the resource, then you actually want to make sure that both are mapped to the resource manager, so role and resource. But if you wanted to, for example, take out the role, or sometimes, to be honest, you can't necessarily pinpoint one resource manager to a role because there might be shared responsibilities, right? Then you might want to only leverage the individual assignments.
Hey,
this is
go ahead, Kenny. Go ahead.
Hey,
this
Kenny.
is Kenny. I'm the one asking the question, the
Good.
follow-on question regarding that. So just trying to be clear. So our desire would be a resource manager manages a role and
Yep.
manages the individuals associated with that role. So instead of having to maintain hundreds of resource manager assignments, doing it at the role level but not at the individual level would be the use case that we would want. So I'm trying to understand if that use case works or if
Okay.
it sounds like it only provides access to edit the role level information, and then individuals wouldn't be able to be managed unless they are also added to that same resource manager.
That's correct. Yeah, it's basically a resource entity and a role entity where you manage the mapping. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, of course. But it's a good input that you gave us because, like you said, right, in a larger environment, I would think that there might be an option to say. But I think the one of the things would be is, right, in your case, you would have a clear assignment to role and resource and not like a shared access. So that's something I guess we would have to consider in terms of if you have a role with 20 people and 2 managers are responsible for 10 each, right? That the appropriate access is. I think that's the advantage from doing it on the resource level, but I agree it's a higher level of maintenance. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully that answered all of your questions, Kenny. I think, as far as I'm seeing, unless anybody else wants to raise their hand, I don't see any other questions at this point, and we're at time. So I want to thank you guys very much for your participation. We do have a follow-up survey, and you can either click this QR code, and I think we'll get the link into the chat as well. Yep, it's there now. So yeah, if you have a few minutes of your time, please take a quick look at the survey and give us any feedback how we can improve these webinars going forward. We're still planning to have these every quarter, so your feedback is very much appreciated. Other than that, we thank you so much for your participation and wish you all happy holidays and have a great rest of your day.